Hey guys, my name is 59 Perlen. Welcome to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you the Digitakt Midi Loopback feature. Before we start, actually, we have to prepare the Digitakt a little bit. And the first thing you want to do is you plug a very ordinary MIDI cable from the MIDI out of the Digitakt to the MIDI in of the Digitakt. There you go. And that way you still have the MIDI through to connect other MIDI gear and control it with the Digitakt. When you've done this, you go into the settings menu and you check the MIDI configuration, especially the port configuration is pretty important in our case, because you want to make sure that receive nodes is turned on and receive CC parameters is turned on as well. In this little tutorial, we're going to focus on the CC parameters. So we're going to modify CC by using LFOs, using the MIDI tracks of the Digitakt. But you can also receive nodes, and you can also do other stuff with the loopback feature, which I'm not going to talk about today. But make sure that these two options are turned on. You also want to make sure that the input comes from the MIDI. You could switch this off. You could switch this only to MIDI, because we are not going to use the MIDI USB in this tutorial, but I always leave it as some MIDI and USB, because I use a lot of overbridge help in my videos, so I leave it on. The sync you don't need to take care about, because I'm using the Digitakt in this tutorial standalone. If you want to use it with overbridge, I think you have to turn transport receive on. But for now, we are fine with the port configuration. So now we have done the basics. And I have a new pattern here. And I loaded up a sound that you heard in the beginning. And that sounds like this. It's a pretty simple chord loop. And my track is around 110 BPM. And I have one trick on the first audio track that plays like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to modulate the delay high-pass filter by using one of the MIDI tracks, which is now enabled because I plugged in the MIDI cable here. The first thing you want to do is open up the Digitakt manual, and you will see on one of the last pages there is a table with all of the CC parameters that the Digitakt supports, and all of these parameters you can modify with this technique. When you're going to use the regular LFO of the Digitakt, you only have a couple of destinations which you can modulate. Using this technique, you have much more possibilities and you can modify much more parameters of the Digitakt. I suggest that you go through this and check out. There are really cool possibilities that I also used in one of my previous tracks as well. For today, we choose one of the amp parameters. We are going to work with one of the effects parameters, and that is a delay. And I'm going to show you what you can do with modifying the high pass filter. And that is Midi CC parameter number 89. So keep that in mind, it's number 89. What we first want to do is we're gonna set up our reverb and delay send effects and assign it to our track. And I love high decay times. I don't know to do that infinite, but nearly to infinite. Then we have the delay. we're gonna turn the ping pong effect on. We're gonna make this wide as possible. You can also modify this with the LFOs as well, as you will see later. And the feedback we will do pretty high, and the low pass filter we turn down, and the high pass filter we turn up in the middle of this, something like this. And then we have the track number 1, and we increase the reverb send to, yeah, that's really like your personal preference. I like to use a lot of reverb. And let's add some of the delay. That sounds already pretty cool. Okay. Now we come to the very important part. So now I'm going to choose one of the MIDI tracks. I have 8 of them on the Digitakt. And we're going to open the AMP page, which is on the MIDI tracks. It's the CC Selection page. And you see 8 of those slots, and each of the slots is assigned to these buttons here, to these knobs here. And on the first one, I'm going to choose the value number 89, which is, in my case, the high-pass filter of the send channel. You can also assign the rest of the knobs. So that means you can basically modulate 8 parameters at once if you would like to. For this tutorial, I use only one of the parameters to keep it a little simple. Then you switch over to the CC value page. It's on the filter button. And here you have to activate this CC value to get used with knobs by pressing function and then pressing the knob number 1. And then you see this turns on. That means I assigned now this value to this knob. And now I turn over to the last page, which is a MIDI source page. The same again, I press function and then the first button. And this is activated as well for MIDI channel number 1, which is correct. If my sound would be on channel number 4, then, sorry, then you would need to tell him that you are on MIDI channel number 4. So that means you have to tell him which MIDI channel you want to play, because the tracks, the audio tracks number 1 to 8 on the Digitakt are assigned to MIDI channel 1 to 8. That means audio track number 1 is controlled by MIDI track number 1. And this is the reason why MIDI track number 9 controls MIDI track number 1 with the CC parameters. I hope I hope you understand what I mean, but I think so. It's not so hard. Once you get this whole concept, it's super simple to set up. And now what you can do is, if you go to the CC value page and you turn this knob up or down, when you switch to the delay setup page, that's function and delay, you see that the high pass frequency is now pretty high. If I turn back to the MIDI track and I lower down this value to 40, you see that this value turned this high pass frequency filter down. So that means we connected the value of the MIDI track to the value of our delay high pass frequency filter. And now we can modify it with an LFO. So because each of those 8 MIDI tracks has an LFO you can use. That means you turn on the LFO page, and then you have, as a destination, you not only have the basic values of the source, but now you can choose the CC value 1, which we configured on this page. CC value 1 is 89. And now I can choose this as a destination from our LFO, and I can start modifying this LFO. And I suggest, if you work with a lot of delay feedbacks, you should be pretty careful with this, because you can pretty much get a messed up sound that that hurts your ears. So be careful with that. Just have a look, just have a listen how it sounds like. And you see when I turn on back to the delay page, you see that my LFO is already controlling the high pass frequency range, and it turns up and turns down. I'm gonna go back to audio track number 1. I have to give it a little bit more delay send so you can hear the effect. And now we're gonna slow down the speed of this a lot. I do this a lot in my tracks. I use a lot of low speeds. And you see that this is moving now super slow. And you hear how the sound evolves pretty slow, but constantly. And now you have a lot of possibilities what you can do. I mean, we didn't go into the detail of the LFO settings right now, but what you could do is you could actually use a random LFO. Go a little bit more into depth. Now I go to MIDI track number 10 and I want to add another modulation, and this time I'm going to modulate the reverb high pass frequency. So I turn this down and let's have a look. That's parameter number 28. You can look this up in the Digitakt manual. And that means I go again onto my CC selector, select Midi CC parameter 28, go onto the CC value page, activate button number 1, select one of those middle, like the middle CC value, that's 65, go to page number, to the MIDI source number, activate this for MIDI channel number 1. Actually, in this case, because the Digitakt only works with a global send effects, the MIDI channel in our case doesn't matter because it takes effects on all of the effects. It doesn't matter which of these channels you are playing. The send effects are going to affect all of them. If you assign or give one of those tracks a little bit of delay, they will all play with the same frequency movement. If you, let's say, you have a bit reduction that you are going to modify, that is very track specific, and then it's really important to choose the correct channel number here. Okay, now we have set our reverb. Let's try that out. You see the reverb high pass frequency is now kind of the middle, and let's check this out if it works. We are still on MIDI track number 10 and turn that down, and you hear that already. And you see it turned down. That means I did the configuration of MIDI track number 10 correctly, and now I can start adding the LFO modulation to it. So I make sure that I'm still on track number 10. I turn up the MIDI value a little bit, go to the LFO page, choose CC value 1, yes, and let's choose a depth of 14. Let's play. I'm gonna say something to this right now in a couple of seconds. And you see that the reverb high pass frequency moves now. It moves pretty fast. I do this pretty often to check if the range I want to let this move is okay. And then I turn down the speed of that so it evolves pretty slowly. Yeah. That's cool. A little bit more feedback on the delay. So it starts modulating itself. Yeah, that's cool. But I don't like the random waveform. Let's choose the sinus waveform for this one, so it gets a smooth transition. Yeah. And there you have it. The only thing you really need to take care about is that you need to trigger the 2 MIDI tracks before you start playing. Otherwise, they won't start modulating. When you double press the pause button to stop everything playing on the Digitakt, you also stop the LFOs on track number 9 and number 10, and you can control it by going onto the delay and reverb parameter pages, and you see that they stop moving. If you press those buttons once, they start moving again because you started the LFO as well. And you just have to make sure that if you start performing or you start playing, that you trig them once. You can do that by placing a trigless trig, by pressing function and adding a trig on number 1, and then you tell you add a trig condition where you say only once. First, where is it? There is a condition that says only once. Where is it? Well, anyway, that's the first one. Okay. And that tells him that it's only playing the very first time it's triggering. And then you are sure on the safe side that your MIDI loopback feature works. So thanks for joining. I hope this little tutorial was helpful for you. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below. If you like my channel, you know how that works. Click the subscribe button and like this video. And we see us to another tutorial and another track jam very soon. Have a nice one.